Hello, I took last weekend off from making videos because it was my birthday, but I have been busy at coding. And what I've been working on is Borland Genetics version 3. The big difference between version 1 and version 2 is that version 2 allowed users to create scripts to automate their own workflows. The big difference between version 2 and version 3 is that the Creeper tool is going to create its own scripts for users based on the data library and based on users' progress to automate their workflows for them and help manage their workflows. We're a ways off with that. This is going to take a while, but the Creeper tool beta is activated on my computer and it should be on yours soon. I'm going to show you a little bit of what it is and what it does, and then I'm going to show you how you can use it to change your settings, which is something immediately you're going to be able to do. So it's basically a portal to the internet from the desktop version of the software to the internet version of the software. And when you click on the Creeper, it opens up a gateway between the two. And so let's go to settings. The home page for the Creeper is going to look very different for you than it does right here because this is just a test version that I've been using to transmit messages and things like that. Instead, on your version, it's going to have something called the phase matrix, which is going to prioritize steps in your workflow and walk you through them. Okay, but that's a little bit in the future. But right away, as soon as I release version 3, you're going to be able to do things like change your settings. And a lot of people have asked for this. The settings that I'm going to be able to change through here are going to be the data directory, the data library directory, and the directory where zipped output files are going to be generated, and whether or not to even automatically generate those zip files. Okay, so the first thing you want to do when you get here, because everything is blank below, and that's the nature of this particular communication protocol between the desktop software and the internet, you basically have to give permission for each transmission to occur. So we're going to populate the form with current toolkit settings. So there it read my settings. This is where my files are stored. And you see that I chose to store my data library on the cloud, which is something you couldn't do in version 2, but it's something you can do in version 3. And I set the data directory where zipped output files will be generated to the downloads folder. And the reason I did that is because that's kind of where everything else ends up winding up. And when I go to Jetbatch and I want to upload something, that's typically the first folder that comes up, so it'll just make my life a little easier. I think that'll be a popular place to send your zipped files. And then you can toggle the zip file generation on or off. And why would you want to do that? Well, let's click on what does this do, because all of the tools and all of the processes in the Creeper mode will have help. Besides the written help, which is really non-existent on this page so far because it's still in beta. It'll have wiki instructions. It'll have relevant web content, which is where I'm going to post this video when I'm done. Okay, so if you don't know what toggle automatic zip file generation does or why you would care whether or not it's creating zip files, you click on what does this do, and here you go.
When the box is checked, zipped output files will automatically be generated to accompany the text version of every synthetic DNA kit generated by Borland Genetics. When the box is unchecked, only text versions of output files will be generated, which will be compatible with other Borland Genetics tools, but will not be suitable for upload to most third-party DNA databases. Some tools, when operated in Creeper mode, will allow you to override the default setting you choose. Any changes you make to the settings on this screen will take effect only if you click Submit.
Okay, so I know I turned on the volume a little late in there, but you can read what it said to do, or what the description was, or get the idea basically that there is a description for everything. Like for example, the reassigned data library directory. Let's listen to that from scratch now that I have the volume on.
You may replace the path displayed in the text box if you wish to specify a different path as the directory on your computer or in the cloud that you wish to function as your data library. No files on your computer will be moved. This will only affect where Borland Genetics generates output files and searches for input files from here forward. Any changes you make to the settings on this screen will take effect only if you click Submit.
So these are my instructions that I have, programmed in JavaScript to be displayed or spoken when you ask what a tool does. But the wiki instructions, I think, are really going to be much more useful than that, because a wiki is sort of crowdsourced. Users will be able to change the directions, to add things to the instructions to make them more useful. It will be very collaborative, and I think it's going to end up in a much more thorough and helpful instruction package or manual, if you want to call it that. And the links that I'll provide in the wiki instructions will be to those particular wiki parts of the wiki that are applicable to the settings, because we're on the settings page, or to whatever it is. Okay, so to reassign the data library directory, I'm just going to open up my data library. This is the one that was automatically created for me on by Borland Genetics when I first opened the tool in version 2. And that's where most of the stuff I have is. And this will be the default for where your configuration is saved. So even if you create a new data library, you can't erase the old one. You can, but then your configuration files will be lost. So, but all the large files will go to the new data library. Okay, so I'm going to paste that into where I'm going to reassign the data library. And let's make the zip files go to the same place. So this is essentially going to restore my default setting. And by the way, if you just erase your config file, that'll also restore the default settings on the next load of the program. So now you can apply changes to only this session or to all future sessions. And the reason you would, well, let's see what the creeper says.
You may wish to only apply the changes to the current Borland Genetics session if, for example, during this session you plan to work on a separate project such as assisting an unrelated friend or preparing files for a test or demonstration, and you wish to keep the files in a separate directory from your primary personal projects. Or, you may wish to apply any changes to all future sessions as new default settings. Any changes you make to the settings on this screen will take effect only if you click Submit.
So the creeper, by the way, is pretty, I guess you'd call it dumb or untrained right now, because it's just repeating some simple information that I gave it. But as time goes by, I plan to make the creeper much more like Alexa or Cortana or any of those types of virtual assistants or bots, chat bots, that will actually participate in the workflow and in designing the workflows with you. To make your life easier. But for now, at least he is reading the directions out loud. And okay, so I'm going to apply the changes only to this session because I want them to revert back to what they were before this session. So the difference is going to be, it's not going to, if I apply the changes only to this session, it's not going to store a config script in the default Borland Genetics data library that redirects it to wherever. It's just going to change the global variables in the program for the rest of this session as to where to look for files. So if I'm working on something for someone else, I may want to do this. Or generally, I may just want to keep switching my sessions, and that's going to be a way of organizing maybe my folders if I'm working on multiple unrelated projects. But I do caution you on that, because sometimes it would seem unrelated, or projects may seem unrelated, but they are. For example, if you don't want to put your maternal and paternal in two different files, because they could be related, because, for example, you might be able to use your mother to create a reconstruction of your father. And if you put those in separate folders, if you let the system put them in separate folders, because you can't do this manually, it won't work properly. If you do let the system create separate folders for each, then the creeper is not going to say, well, hey, you've also tested your mother, let's reconstruct your father on the paternal side, because it's not going to see that kit for your mother. Um, okay, well, anyway, we're a long way off from that, but at least you could change your settings now. So what happens when you click submit? That's when it makes them effective. And it sends a signal to the desktop version, and the desktop says, okay, I did what the creeper told me. When I clicked submit, the creeper sent some instructions to the toolkit, and the settings were successfully modified. And these are new sets of instructions because there is no settings tool in the desktop version. So the creeper is essentially writing code and sending it to the desktop version, which is cool because that's what it's going to need to do to help you with your workflows. It's going to need to examine your problems or your when I say problems, I mean it's going to find solutions to your particular arrangement or configuration of data resources, of DNA resources, and it's going to come up with a solution of how to reconstruct as many ancestors as possible. And it's going to send to the toolkit, which is just going to act like a black box. It's going to send instructions. It's in a form of scripts, to the script writer, and you'll be able to just click OK, and the creeper recommends something. Would you like to do this? Yes, and it'll automatically reconstruct a certain person based on your resources. That's my goal anyway. And like I said, we've got a few months or maybe a year or two before that is fully functional to the way I want it to, because I want it to be smart. I don't want it to just be regurgitating workflows that I create. I want it to actually create its own workflows and learn like a artificial intelligence type of tool. Light artificial intelligence. It's not going to take over the world or anything like that. But okay, you get the idea. And whenever you're in creeper mode, you have to hit continue so that the Borland Genetics desktop engine gets back to listening to what the creeper tells it to do. Otherwise, it'll just ignore what it tells it to do. And you'll see from the creeper, you'll be able to access non-creeper tools like the HIR mapper, and they'll come up in different windows. And or when you click about, you'll be able to get to the Borland Genetics homepage. But when you click on another creeper tool, such as the creeper home, it will change the page because you cannot open up different creeper windows. If I press control and click on settings, that will screw up the creeper. It can only have one window open at a time. And when you close that window, which is what you'll do at every end of a session with the creeper, you will hit just close out, and it'll do some things that it needs to do to shut down properly, and you just have to wait a few seconds. And there you go. The creeper successfully deactivated. And it does take a few seconds. Continue. And then you're back into Borland Genetics. And we didn't do anything particularly revolutionary here, but that's how the creeper is going to work. To give you an idea of how the creeper will work in the future.